Hey guys, it's Greg from DadPad Gaming, and today we are reviewing Need for Speed Unbound. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Need for Speed Unbound is a unique title compared to the static titles from Need for Speed that we've been getting here as of lately. Criterion Games has been left as a support studio for EA Games, and they are finally back at the helm of their very own racing game with Need for Speed Unbound. Let's see if it really has returned to form as they've advertised. So, when we're talking about Unbound, it's exactly what you expect it to be from a Need for Speed Street Racer title. We've got a nameless character who does at least receive the nickname of Speedy, who you are free to customize to be a woman or a man or anything in between. Speedy and their friend Jasmine are attempting to take over Lakeshore's street racing scene by storm, and everything's going great. That is until things go left and there is a robbery of some sort and you get your car stolen and you start from scratch. The way these games always go. Surprise! Anyways, you're working your way up the chains in order to win the right to race for your pink slip back for your car and to take Lakeshore by storm like you did before the robbery. So, of course, that means setting you free in an open world where you can drive as fast as you want, ramp off of anything that you can get your wheels to grip onto, and of course, run from all the police in Lakeshore. Of course, this is all for the sake of payback. Need for Speed Unbound does a lot of things really good. As mentioned by the story, you have to enter into a competition in order to win your car back. The way that this manifests into a mechanic is each chapter of the story actually breaks into a calendar, so to speak. Each week starts on Sunday, and you race all through the week to reach Saturday. The goal is by Saturday, you should reach enough money in order to enter into the qualifying race for the main tournament where you'll win back your car. Each day is separated into two segments, day and night. Daytime races are usually pretty chill, sometimes there's a big pot to get there, but nighttime is where it's at. The races are bigger, they're badder, the pots of money are huge, and sometimes you can even win a car. The police department tends to be a lot more aggressive at night as well. So the idea here is every time you race, you win money, but you also gain heat. Heat is what attracts the police to come after you. So of course, with that becomes a risk and reward system. Do you stay out and do another race now that you've gotten enough heat to qualify for a heavier race? Or do you go back to your garage to store away your money? This is the mechanic that brings in that risk and reward method that's very similar to a Souls game. Only difference is, if you are busted by the police, there is no chance that you will recover that money. Makes things interesting and also doubles down on the heat mechanic is, when you rest at the garage and enter into the night portion of the day, you still carry over your heat despite the fact that the money is left back at your safe. And this creates a delicate balance of, do you go crazy during the day? Should you wait till nighttime? Or maybe there's a high heat race at night that you need to up the ante for before the day is over with. And that will motivate you to spend more time during the day so that you can reach that big pot race in the evening. Another thing that's really cool about the way that this game is set up, with Need for Speed Unbound, they really do a good job of making the racing community in Lakeshore feel like an actual community. Every rival in each race has their own name, their own style, and their own car preferences. And call me crazy, but I feel like I also seen different AIs for these characters on the racetracks. But to explain more on why this community feels like a community is, outside of the fact that each of these characters has their own name and seemingly their own personalities outside of the story, these rivals eventually start to embrace you, start asking for favors, call you when they're in a jam, and through helping them out, they will unlock other safe houses for you. As you move up the chains, you'll start to see that small-time street racers start to diminish and bigger, badder rivals start to come into play. But of course, as this is a Need for Speed game, the main thing that I'm happy to report to you is the driving here feels great. They really do capture a sense of speed better than any Need for Speed in recent memory. This really does take me back to the older PS2 days, or even some of the better days in the PS3, Xbox 360 days. And just like the heat and the day and night mechanics incentivize risk and reward, so does driving. Going fast consistently relies on a boost mechanic. There's of course the basic street racing, Fast and Furious trope of NOS, which you can get and you can buy more advanced versions of. And then there's your draft meter, which you can fill by drafting, by drifting, or by executing perfect grip turns. And these are things that are all indicated that you're doing properly by the game's anime or comic book aesthetic. If you drift perfectly, you'll start to get the anime smoke effect behind your car. If you hit a grip turn at the perfect angle and you turn without drifting, you'll have another effect that'll show these spiky things come out the side of your car. You can also increase your draft meter by taking jumps into the sky, which the game shows you wings next to your car to implicate that you are charging up that draft meter. And while the NOS meter is a little bit more chill and low key, when you max out your draft meter, you get a crown right above your car, and that's what lets you know that it's time to go fast. And because I know a lot of you guys are probably worried, never once did any of those new comic book or anime aesthetics actually get in the way of driving. They're really cool, stylish ways to give you a little bit of flourish for doing the right thing. In fact, it was kind of nice knowing that I could just boost when the crown popped up rather than take my eyes off the road to check any of those meters when things got heated. And while charging up NOS is still a thing, you get that by doing more passive things like near misses and by driving on the wrong side of the road. The normal things that you would get those charges for in other games pretty much. And lastly, despite the fact the gameplay here speaks for itself, the car models and the map of Lakeshore are really, really good. This is a really, really looking driving game. Probably the best driving game available visually outside of Gran Turismo and Forza Horizon 5. Now, of course, as always, no game is perfect, and Need for Speed Unbound does have a couple things that needs improvement. And that comes down to the difficulty here. Because of the nature of this being an open world racing game, most races require you to go through checkpoints, and there were lots of times that police and rivals both would actually ram you off of the course outside of the checkpoint, which would then cause you to have to reset your car before you can proceed forward. And while those things should probably happen on occasion in an arcade racer, in this instance, it happened far too often. It almost made me feel like the CPU was actually aware of where those checkpoints were. And of course, starting at 0 miles per hour with a group of cars that are already at 100 miles plus is almost a guaranteed loss. There were also a few times that police cars came out of absolutely nowhere just for the purpose of ramming me off the road when I was in first place and moments away from winning the prize. And while you would think that's something that you shouldn't complain about because the police are pretty much designed to stop you, This is a game that makes it clear that even the AI makes mistakes, and while this has happened to me multiple times, not once did I ever see policemen pop out of nowhere from the side of the road or in the front of the road in order to knock one of your AI rivals off course from their race. And this is really important because the game tends to hit the fuck you button quite often in Need for Speed Unbound, which most racing game fans know exactly what I mean when I say the fuck you button. And it's doubly insulting here, simply for the fact that along with the heat mechanic that carries over from day to night, you actually have a limited number of retries in Need for Speed Unbound. Normal mode allows you to retry 4 times. 4 times. And that's not 4 times per race, that's 4 times per calendar day. So if I'm hit by Officer Shiesty and he knocks me off from my checkpoint, which sends me backwards in the race, now I've only got 3 retries. But if I retry again and now Justicia does the same thing to me, oh well, now I've got 2 more retries for the rest of the day, and those retries carry over into the night cycle as well. And Unbound works a little different when entering races. Long gone are the days where if you had a qualifying car, you're in. In Need for Speed Unbound, you actually have to use your money to buy into races. So if I get cheated out by bad AI or bad luck or whatever it is, and I spend $30,000 to enter a race and I'm out of retries, I'm out of money, which is fine if that's the experience that you're looking for. I truly think the easiest way to fix this problem, especially for a game like Need for Speed that wants to cater to a casual racing fan, seeing that this is a arcade racer and not a simulator, would be to simply either allow players to toggle off and on the retry system, or to give you a locked amount of retries per race instead of per calendar day. Along with the nuisance of the retry system comes another issue with the retry system. If you make it to Saturday for the competition, it requires that you win a series of 3 races. The first race requires you to win top 6, the second race top 3, the third race number 1. And if you run out of retries here, you don't try the race over, they send you back to Friday morning, which gives you who knows how many races to reattempt before you get back to your Saturday qualifying races. And while I'm all for a challenging experience, that particular mechanic adds a bit too much stress to something I'm assuming is meant to be a fun and casual arcadey street racing experience. And lastly, I'm not the biggest fan of the character models. Like, they look okay, but I've seen better cel shaded characters, and something about the semi-photorealistic cars and background next to the cel shaded characters feels a little weird to me, but to each their own. My last gripe is the voice acting here isn't necessarily bad, but it can feel a bit unauthentic. As most of you know, A$AP Rocky stars in this game, and because of that, the soundtrack here is a hip-hop EDM infused mesh of things, and it's actually pretty good. And because of that, the dialogue here is urban derived. And I say urban in air quotes, which is fine for the most part. But the main issue is towards the beginning of this game, I actually switched from a male character over to a female character simply because male voice for Speedy was clearly a white guy who was told to use quote unquote urban slang. And it sounded terrible, especially coming from my custom character who was clearly a black guy, hip hop inspired clothes on. It was just a mess. Luckily, the female voice actor for Speedy has a voice that is a lot more culturally ambiguous, and it actually worked a lot. Once that happened, me and Speedy actually started to mesh a little bit. Need for Speed Unbound is a fun game that has a lot going for it. A great soundtrack, genuinely funny moments that make fun of both millennials and the older generation, and a stellar car selection. I mean, I have every GTR and Skyline you could imagine. Not to mention solid to great racing mechanics, and despite my own personal opinions, has a very unique and defining art style to boot. Despite a few shortcomings, I proudly present Need for Speed Unbound with an 8 out of 10.